Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today I got a fun and interesting follow-up to the House of the Dead 2 demo video I ran last week, because a lot of people were talking about the overall changes and a lot of you were confused a little bit as to why I said the game was so incredibly disappointing compared to the arcade original and the Dreamcast port. So I'm here to talk about that today, about art design in video games, about the choice of color, intonation, and voice, and every other small granular decision that ends up making or breaking a product, because honestly the House of the Dead 2 remake is going the same way as the original House of the Dead remake, which is to say not in any sort of positive direction. As we move from the remake to the original, you can 100% see the tonal shift not only in the presentation of the graphics, but in the colors chosen, the overall lightscape, and everything else that makes the House of the Dead 2 the original game that is an absolute Hall of Fame classic. When you're going to remake a property, of course you're going to make changes to it, but they need to be for the better and they need to respect the source material. Now, I'm not some sort of purist that thinks you can't change anything about a product to relaunch it to make it more modern for a modern audience, but there is a right way and a wrong way to do it, and that's what we're here to talk about. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But the first thing right off the top is I don't know what's going on with this green hued filter in the first part of the demo. There is no green in the environment. They've basically completely shifted the color, where here you'll see as G's on the floor, you have that pseudo lighting coming in from the windows and everything looks like a rainy day in Europe. It has a setting, it has a place, and it has an overall concept as to where it actually wants to be located geographically. And as we go back to the intro here, the first chapter, you'll see here that as you come in, there's this reddish green hue over absolutely everything, like there's just some sort of screen space filter applied over the top. It definitely hides some of the details in the background, and maybe they're not the highest resolution assets, so they're trying to kind of obscure that. And while you can definitely tell you're in a European city somewhere, you lose so much detail in the background. Sure, there's a couple zombies running around, but you really can't tell what it is you're looking at. Or if we go to the exact same intro, obviously on the original version on Naomi here, you get so much more animation in the first chapter title card, and then as you come into the car, obviously the graphics aren't quote unquote as nice as they are on a modern system, but you get such a better read on this being an older European city. It's made out of masonry, it definitely has a lot of wear and tear to it. That church may not have anywhere near as many polygons, but it instantaneously reads so much better, and you can see all the way into the distance, the bikes, everything else. As we move back indoors into the remake again, the entire overall color profile, light and shading has changed. Now the kind of effect of the shadows on the gate does look nice, but the animation of the zombies here and everything else just takes you out of it. That swipe kind of felt like it was phoned in, a feign punch from a zombie. It just doesn't work in the same way. Sure, it's exactly the same gameplay beat, you're going through the same paths, but it feels completely different. As they move back to the same area in the Dreamcast original, you're going to see again it is bright, it is well lit, and it takes place during the day, which is what the story was calling for. This is basically one day in the world of the House of the Dead 2, and you'll see that the game actually gets progressively darker as the time goes on. It is a storytelling technique to change the light throughout the game so you understand exactly how the progression of time goes by. And if we take a look at the introductory cut sequence here, there's just something about this FMV video that absolutely hitches and does not have anywhere near enough frames in it to feel fluid whatsoever. This just basically is your introduction to the House of the Dead 2 remake, and it just feels stilted and abrupt, and I absolutely hate this blood splatter effect they put at the corners of the screen, because it drives the viewer's eyes away from what they should be looking at and presents a distraction. Now, in years past, I was a college professor of film and television, and when I would talk to my students about the composition of a shot, I would talk about where you want to draw the eye's attention to. You do not put anything in the scene that is going to make the viewer look in a direction you don't want them to, unless you're trying to actually do some sort of visual trickery or sleight of hand to distract them intentionally. This filter just looks like they were taking a PNG file, threw some transparencies over it, and thought it looked good, and while it isn't the ugliest thing in the world, it just doesn't fit the overall theme, and again, it causes a visual distraction. Yes, this is the same same basic shot composition and structure as the original intro to the House of the Dead. It just doesn't have anywhere near the impact. When Goldman shows up here, he is evenly lit, which is a problem. When we move over to the introductory sequence of the House of the Dead 2 on Sega NAOMI, you're going to see, one, we do not have that blood splatter effect over the top, so we can focus on everything that's going on, and it just presents a way more cohesive visual language. I know on the channel a lot I talk about, air quotes, the vibe, and what I mean when I say that is just the overall feeling you get when you look at and play a game. The world building in the House of the Dead 2 and the entire House of the Dead franchise has always been top notch. Obviously, a light gun game isn't the most complicated genre in the world, so you really have to excel at it by building a world, an environment, and a story that the player is invested in, and Sega was absolutely the top at doing that in the arcades in the 90s. Watching this introductory cut sequence, you get story beats from where you're going to be later on in the gameplay, and it excites you and makes you want to get closer to it. And again, all of the graphics and all of the colors and the times of day just work, and as Goldman comes in here, you're going to see as he stands up, his face is obscured in shadows because he still should be a mysterious figure until the end of the game. Changing that shadow changes what you know about Goldman as a character before you actually meet him, and that just is a problem. Yes, it's a small problem, but these are the type of things that a professional art director from a game development studio should be thinking of. You should be going through the source material and understanding how the visual storytelling informs the player as to what they're supposed to know and what they're not supposed to know yet. That one shadows the difference between ambiguity and absolute clarity, both figuratively and literally. And again, as we move through this back alley here, this yellow filter over the top is starting to kind of look like a Call of Duty filter from the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era, where everything had to have that piss brown color over it. We got rid of it, we don't want to go back to it, and it doesn't fit the overall environment as far as something like the House of the Dead is concerned. And again, that is just something that we really don't want to have here, and it's something that we have to encounter the whole time. Where we move back to the Dreamcast version, you get that dramatic sky, but you otherwise get a slight yellowing, and that is just based upon the color of the brick in the environment. And as this woman comes up here after we save her and she gives us a health up, you're going to see it's basically in the shape of a health up. When we do the exact same thing over on the remake side of things, I don't really even care that they switched the barrel out from wood to metal, but it just doesn't look the same. The animations aren't as good, the ragdolling drives me nuts, and whatever she hands us does not seem like a health up. And as we get into the first boss battle, I started thinking to myself after I did the first video, where have I seen this weird yellow filter before? Because I definitely have seen it, and I knew it was in a light gun game and horror based. Then I remembered about 3 years ago, I talked about Silent Hill the arcade, and there's nothing about Silent Hill that should remind you of the House of the Dead in the appearance. But the voice acting and the change in intonation drives me nuts too. Go ahead and listen to 2 sound samples, and I'll be right back with a little bit more explanation.
Amy, Harry!
Thank God you're all right.
What the hell's going on in the city?
Don't know, but it's very similar to the 1998 Curian case.
That case?
James, go and prevent the confusion in the city.
Okay.
Let's meet at Sunset Bridge. We're counting on you, James.
No more fooling around!
Amy! Harry!
Thank God you're all right.
What the hell's going on in this city?
Don't know, but it's very similar to the 1998 Curian case.
That case?
James, go and prevent the confusion in the city.
Okay.
Let's meet at Sunset Bridge. We're counting on you, James.
No more fooling around.
Now, I'm not trying to say that the voice acting from the original House of the Dead 2 is going to win any awards anytime soon. It is some of the worst voice acting around from Sega back then. But the intonation of the voice, the way it lifts up on certain words and drop down on others, and the overall spacing of the voice clips tell a cohesive story. When they change that in the remake, it makes no sense and completely changes the meanings of the word, even if they are the same. And any sort of audio director, any sort of voice coach that is recording the lines would know that and talk about it. And as we see the first boss battle here, it's a dramatic image, it looks way too much like Silent Hill, and it just completely kills the vibe that the original game was going for and accomplished. That's why the House of the Dead 2 is such an incredible game, and that's why someone would want to remake it in the first place. And this is what the original boss battle looked like. You have the European city, you have that dramatic sky that you can see, you have smoke coming out of a chimney, you have all of the signs swinging around as the weight of the boss in front of you shakes the earth, and it just has a better look to it. And of course, this is is much older 3D technology, but the point is that when you're going to remake a game, a movie, any sort of property, you have to understand why people loved it in the first place. Because honestly, light gun games are a dime a dozen back then, and even the best light gun game as far as the gameplay is concerned is a very simple thing. We love light gun games because they build a universe and environment that we love. If you love horror and you love light gun games and you played the original House of the Dead, House of the Dead 2 is an extension of what we loved and Sega delivered on it. Unfortunately, the developers of the remake don't understand why people love the game. They just think if they remake it and it plays the same, they will be fine, and trust me, they won't. But that's the last time I'm going to talk about the House of the Dead remake until it actually releases and I review it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.